Before history was written, it was fought in blood. This is Echoes of War. Germany, 1918. The guns of the First World War had fallen silent, but peace did not arrive with relief. It arrived with hunger, with humiliation, with a quiet, simmering rage that spread through a defeated nation like smoke through ruins. The empire had collapsed. The Kaiser was gone. Soldiers returned home not to parades, but to unemployment lines and empty cupboards. Many could not understand how the strongest army in Europe had lost. On the battlefield, they had not seen total defeat. No enemy columns had marched through Berlin. No final battle had shattered the nation in a single blow. Instead, the war had ended with signatures on paper. To many Germans, it felt like betrayal.
Politicians formed a fragile new democracy, the Weimar Republic, but it was born in chaos. Street battles erupted between radical groups, communist uprisings flared in cities, right-wing militias roamed with rifles and old uniforms, unwilling to accept the new order. The country was not at peace. It was exhausted, angry, and afraid. Then came the Treaty of Versailles. Signed in 1919, it demanded that Germany accept full blame for the war. It stripped the nation of territory, colonies, and military strength. The army was reduced to a shadow, the navy was shattered, and crushing financial reparations were imposed, some so vast they felt less like punishment and more like permanent chains. To the outside world, it was justice. To many Germans, it was humiliation carved into law. Among those who felt that humiliation deeply was a former soldier who had spent the war in the trenches, carrying messages through gunfire and gas. He had been wounded, he had watched friends die, and when Germany surrendered, he lay in a hospital bed, temporarily blinded by a gas attack, listening as the news reached him. His name was Adolf Hitler. He was not a general, not a nobleman, not even German by birth. He had been born in Austria, drifted through failed ambitions as an artist, and found purpose only in war. The army had given him belonging, discipline, identity. Defeat took that away. Like many veterans, he searched for someone to blame, and in the chaos of post-war Germany, voices were everywhere offering answers, simple answers to complex suffering. Conspiracy theories spread through beer halls and back rooms. They spoke of traitors within, of enemies who had not fought on the battlefield, but in politics, finance, and culture. These ideas were not new. Anti-Semitism had long existed in Europe. Nationalist resentment had deep roots. But now, in a nation humiliated and desperate, those ideas found fertile ground. Hitler discovered he had a talent he had never shown before. He could speak. At first, it was small meetings in Munich, a few dozen people listening to an angry veteran in a worn coat. But when he spoke, his voice trembled with emotion that felt real, raw, and contagious. He did not talk like a politician. He raged like someone who had suffered alongside his audience. He spoke of betrayal, of lost pride, of a Germany that had been stabbed in the back. He promised revival, strength, unity. He promised that the humiliation of Versailles would be erased, that the nation would rise again. People listened. He joined a tiny political group called the German Workers' Party. It was insignificant, one of many fringe movements born in the ruins of war. But Hitler quickly became its most powerful voice. He reshaped its message, expanded its focus, and infused it with fierce nationalism and racial ideology. Soon, it had a new name, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. Their symbol, a twisted ancient sign called the swastika, became a banner under which anger could gather. Their meetings grew louder, larger, more theatrical. Flags hung from walls, music played, speeches became performances designed to stir emotion rather than thought. Hitler understood something crucial. People in crisis do not just want solutions, they want meaning.
They want someone to tell them that their suffering has a cause, and that someone else is to blame. In 1923, convinced that Germany was weak and the government unstable, Hitler attempted to seize power by force. Inspired by Mussolini's march on Rome, he and his followers stormed a beer hall in Munich, where local leaders were gathered, declaring a revolution. It failed. Police opened fire. The coup collapsed. Hitler was arrested and charged with treason. It should have been the end of his political career. Instead, the trial became his stage. In court, he did not deny his actions. He justified them. He presented himself as a patriot, trying to save Germany from corruption and weakness. Newspapers reported his speeches.
His name, once local, became national. He was sentenced to prison. But prison was not the silence his enemies expected. It was a pause, a place to think, to write, to plan. While imprisoned, Hitler dictated a book that would outline his worldview, a mixture of autobiography, political theory, and racial obsession. In it, he described history as a struggle between races. He spoke of the need for Germany to expand, to gain living space. He blamed Jews, Marxists, and Democrats for the nation's suffering. The book was called Mein Kampf, My Struggle. Few at the time took it seriously. It was rambling, extreme, filled with bitterness. Many assumed it was just the angry writing of a failed revolutionary. They were wrong.
When Hitler was released from prison, he had learned an important lesson. Power would not come from a sudden uprising. It would come from the system itself. So he changed strategy. The Nazi Party would seek power legally, through elections, through propaganda, through persuasion and intimidation woven together. Throughout the late 1920s, the party remained on the fringes. Germany slowly stabilized. The economy improved with foreign loans. Cities grew lively again. For a moment, it seemed the worst had passed. But stability built on fragile foundations can collapse quickly. In 1929, the Great Depression struck. Banks failed, businesses closed, millions lost their jobs. Breadlines stretched through city streets. Families who had just begun to rebuild their lives fell back into desperation.
Fear returned, and with fear came the search for simple answers once more. The Nazis were ready. Their message had not changed, but now it resonated louder. They blamed the economic collapse on weak leadership, on international forces, on internal enemies. They promised jobs, order, and national rebirth. Their rallies became massive spectacles. Torches lit the night. Banners waved in perfect lines. Uniforms gave followers a sense of belonging. The chaos of the world outside was replaced by the illusion of unity and purpose inside. Hitler's image was carefully crafted. He was presented as a man of destiny, a voice of the people, someone who understood their pain. Modern propaganda techniques, posters, radio broadcasts, films, carried his message into homes across Germany.
Meanwhile, violence simmered beneath the surface. Nazi paramilitary groups, the SA, marched through streets, clashing with political opponents. Meetings were disrupted. Fear became part of political life. Democracy began to feel less like freedom and more like disorder. In elections, the Nazi vote surged. From a tiny fringe party, they became one of the largest political forces in Germany. Still, they did not hold a majority. Many leaders believed they could control Hitler, use his popularity while keeping real power in their own hands. They underestimated him. In January 1933, after months of political deadlock and backroom deals, President Paul von Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. To some, it seemed like a compromise, a way to stabilize the government by bringing the loudest voice inside the system. But once inside, Hitler moved quickly.
Just weeks later, the German parliament building, the Reichstag, went up in flames. A communist was arrested at the scene. The fire was presented as proof of a vast conspiracy against the nation. Fear surged again. Hitler demanded emergency powers to protect Germany from its enemies. Civil liberties were suspended. Political opponents were arrested. Newspapers were silenced. The atmosphere of crisis allowed extraordinary measures to seem necessary. Then came the Enabling Act. Passed under intimidation and pressure, it gave Hitler the power to make laws without parliamentary approval. It was legal, voted through by elected representatives.
And it effectively ended German democracy. Within months, other political parties were banned, trade unions were dissolved, regional governments were brought under central control. The state, step by step, became an extension of one man's will. Many Germans watched this transformation with unease. Others welcomed it, believing that strong leadership was restoring order and pride. Unemployment began to fall as massive public works and rearmament programs created jobs. The economy appeared to revive. For those who benefited, it felt like proof that Hitler's promises were working. But the cost was already being paid by others. Jews were pushed out of public life, barred from professions, targeted by boycotts and laws designed to isolate them. Political dissidents disappeared into early concentration camps. Fear changed its direction, no longer aimed at chaos, but at the state itself.
The transformation had been gradual enough that many did not see the full shape of what was forming, or did not want to see it. By the time Hitler declared the creation of the Third Reich, a so-called empire that would last 1,000 years, the foundations were set. Democracy had not fallen in a single dramatic collapse. It had been dismantled piece by piece, each step justified as necessary, temporary, or patriotic. The rise of Hitler was not just the story of one man's ambition. It was the story of a society wounded by war, shaken by economic disaster, and seduced by promises of renewal without the burden of compromise. It was a warning about how fear can be turned into power, how anger can be shaped into a movement, how democracy can be undone using its own mechanisms. The world would soon feel the consequences of that rise.
Because once power was secured at home, Hitler's ambitions turned outward. The treaties that had restrained Germany were torn apart. The military grew. Borders were challenged. The march toward another, even more devastating war had begun. But that is another echo. The battlefield grows silent, but history never does.